Hello and welcome to It's a Frankly Harry podcast. This is your host, Frank Weber. So glad you could join me today in the forest. I have a very special show for you here today, a very packed show and a bit of a somber and serious show, but we'll try to keep it light where we can. As you know by now, a couple nights ago, Saturday, July 13th, President Trump had an assassination attempt at his rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. That's not a good look on our society and really not a good look on humanity, and I'll get into that in a little bit here after I detail or summarize some of the events that happened Saturday night. I have a special place in my heart for people who are, I guess you could say, maligned and persecuted and railroaded. I feel like I've had some of that happen in my life myself over the years. And, you know, I like President Trump. I thought he had pretty decent policies, better than most presidents and politicians that we've had lately. And so I support him, and I support him even more now. So this past Saturday, July 13th, in the evening, he was at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and was speaking when a bullet grazed the upper part of his right ear, caused a little bleeding, and then he fell to the ground, was surrounded by Secret Service. They brought him back upright, and he would gesture to the crowd and said, "Fight, fight, fight." One of the spectators was killed by a bullet. A few others were injured. He apparently went to a hospital for treatment, didn't spend much time there. Seems to be doing great. Went out and played golf yesterday on Sunday, and is ready for the convention this week. Love him or hate him, that's just no way to treat another human being. And this goes into a lot of discussion about this show. I consider this to be, It's a Frankly Harry podcast, to be about the human condition, with an emphasis on either on why we screw up or fuck up so many things in our world, or how we seem to be capable of being much better as a species. The way that I look at it is, Jesus said, I came that you might have life and have it to the full. And he meant here and now, which I think is a better example than the trite cliche of live your best life now, or whatever the I don't know. It's not really bullshit, but it just sounds old when people use that cliche. But so that's the emphasis of the show, with an also geared toward context, especially historical context, as well as nuance. And so after that event, I have to be asking myself, as I am on a lot of different news of the day, how did we get here? Because, you know, I'm 46, approaching 47. Things were not perfect back when I was a kid, but we didn't have the hatred and the vitriol like we do now. So I ran across a podcast. I don't know who the host is. I probably should have checked that, but Vivek Ramaswamy was the guest there. He's several years younger than me, very educated, very articulate, very likable young man. And I believe the host asked him something about how we got here, and he may have been talking more about politics and the larger picture than just society and how we treat each other, but that kind of starts the discussion. In the 60s, which was definitely a turning point, one turning point in our country in the 20th century, he said that LBJ and the Great Society basically started a administrative state or bureaucratic state, kind of a nanny state, if you will, that grew and grew and grew. And with that, he got into a point about citizens not really understanding their relationship to other citizens, even if they don't personally know each other, as well as its relationship to the government and civic duties, like I'm sure he meant voting and jury duty, if you don't actually serve in the government in some way, shape, or form, like the military. And I thought that was a pretty good answer. I do think that people nowadays, I mentioned this on other shows, they need to talk to each other more. They're way too busy. I was even writing something yesterday about trying to smile at everybody that you meet and maybe give them a short compliment on something, like, I like, your shirt or what it says or your necklace or whatever. Not that I'm a thief or trying to steal stuff from them or any shit like that, but just to give them a quick compliment. Maybe brighten their day a small amount. And if they're not in too big a hurry, maybe have a conversation with them. I think that is something that we could all do more of. And that's what I try to do on this show, in fact. Now, me as a late Gen Xer, not X-ray, I remember growing up in the 80s. Some of the older Gen Xers remember the 70s more, but that was a great time to be a kid growing up in this United States of America, and people were generally happier. If you don't believe me, just watch some of the old game shows on Game Show Channel or Buzzer. There was something different about people in general. Not that everybody was nice or friendly or, above board or anything like that. I mean, I know we still had the stranger danger talk in whatever that was, 1981 or 82 or I don't know, long time ago. But so you didn't want to talk to strangers and that shit. But people should talk to each other more, and it's not too hard, and it doesn't take a lot of time, even if you don't talk about much or make their acquaintance. And it's kind of like the thing about going into a convenience store or Starbucks and people are just asking, well, how's your day going? Things like that. Simple things like that. And then I would tell you, too, about there was also a nature to politics back then that was not quite as cutthroat and vitriolic as it is now. I'm always reminded of the story, and I liken this to kayfabe in professional wrestling, where the wrestlers are having a big rivalry and they seem like they can't stand each other and want to beat the shit out of each other, but once it's over and they're behind walls in the locker room, they're buddies again and they're out partying and who knows what. But that happened a lot in politics back in the day with President Reagan and Tip O'Neill. I used was the example, how they often were bitter political rivals. Tip O'Neill, by the way, was the Speaker of the House when Reagan was president, and but their families always had dinner together. They seemed to be really good friends. I think that was true in a lot of politics back then, whether they would go out to dinner after work or to the bar or a ball game or a strip club, which, politicians like those a lot. They were more like friends when they were off the clock, essentially. And I wish we could get back to that. I was always interested. There was the thing that seemed to turn it politically was this Robert Bork appointment in the late 1980s. Was appointed to the Supreme Court by President Reagan. President Reagan didn't have a lot of time left in office. And instead of just talking about his credentials and vetting him and how he's qualified for the position. Apparently, Senators Ted Kennedy and they say also Joe Biden really tore into this guy and said terrible things about him and about his past and personal things, maybe even stuff about his family. I don't really remember, but it was a turning point in American politics, and since then we've been very divided. And I don't really have a lot of solutions for how we get back to being undivided. But I do know, we were just talking about Vivek and the turning point of the 60s. If you've listened to this show for any amount of time, you also realize that I felt like our country took a wrong turn in the 90s. And it was very nebulous, and it's hard to put a finger on exactly what it was. I wasn't a big fan of the Clinton administration. I'm still not a big fan. They didn't invent politically correct speech, but I think they put it into the mainstream, and as well as put some other policies into play that would have probably been unfathomable a few years before that, when people were, in the Reagan era 80s, and it seemed like we were all happy and coasting along. Policies that had a lot of unintended consequences, like one that's not particularly hot button would be that he did early on was like NAFTA, and how that's going to cause a lot of trucks to be coming in and out of the country, and there was clogged Interstate 35 through Texas, which is still a terrible mess of traffic. But I thought we went on a path then, a more vitriolic path, a more divided path. I don't really remember even when debate candidates stopped shaking hands, because I think Trump and Biden did not shake hands at their debate a few weeks ago. There's a video of, old debates like Reagan and Mondale where they did shake hands. But I think a big part of the problem is media in general. I think the mainstream media really took a big turn in the 90s, feeling like they could really influence people. I think they influenced a lot of people in the 92 election, even though Ross Perot took a lot of votes as the third candidate. And when you call people, Hitler or Mussolini or Stalin over and over and over again, that sticks with them and people start to really believe it. And I think the rhetoric like that is terrible, no matter who you're saying it against. So that needs to stop. I do think the mainstream media has taken a turn for the worse. Of course, in the 90s, you had the advent of the internet and then later social media, where people can comment on a lot of things and be fairly anonymous. I don't think that's helped. I don't think that's helped the conversation, especially the one that I was talking about earlier. But anyway, that's really all I have to say about that incident the other night. I do think President Trump will win this election. Hesitant to say by a landslide. I really don't know what is going on a lot of times with the closeness of elections. Probably the manipulation that I just mentioned, but manipulation of minds more than anything else, actually. But I do think this is obviously going to give him a big boost, and boy, I sure hope there's not anything else between now and then on that. So I do think it should be a significant election win, just based on what's happening here in July, and everything's really been pointing toward him winning the election this year. I believe. I definitely believe he would win in a more saner time as well. But let me go ahead and liven up the show a little bit. Well, not really liven up the show. It's scratch all that. I don't know what I'm saying half the time on this show, but hopefully you find it entertaining here. I do want to mention real quick, I always thought Tip O'Neill looked kind of like the Blue Eagle guy on the Muppets. I don't know if you remember him or not, or remember the Muppets or the Muppet Show, but that's always what I thought of him as a kid. So there's been a few celebrity deaths in recent days and weeks, actually quite a lot. It's very sad. I just wanted to end the show today by reliving some memories of them, or at least the few memories that I have. There was a comic actor, I don't know if he did stand-up, but died about 10 days ago, maybe around 4th of July, or was it before that? I don't know. Marin Mull. I can't name a lot of the things that he was in. I just remember him. He always played some dubious, semi-nefarious characters in a humorous way. I know Mr. Mom was one of the big movies that he was in. And he was also in that brewery movie with Robert Hayes a couple of years before that, Take This Job and Shove It, very underrated film, and I think he played a similar type character in that. Having trouble off the top of my head remembering a lot else that he was in, but I enjoyed his work. Wish I knew more about him, actually, come to think of it, but that's what I remember him in. We apparently lost Shelley Duvall the other day. She's another person I don't know a whole lot about. She wasn't a particularly visible actress over the years. I know she was best known for being in The Shining with Jack Nicholson, but then she was also in more humorous things like Popeye with Robin Williams, and I believe was in the movie Roxanne with Steve Martin, and Daryl Hannah played a friend of Steve Martin's character with the big long nose. Don't really know what happened to her. Kind of disappeared. But like I said, she wasn't particularly visible. And then we had a bunch of folks here. Let's see. We go back to Saturday. The big news, there's 2 folks apparently died on Saturday and another on Sunday this week. I was surprised. I didn't know what happened to this guy. He kind of disappeared from the public eye. Richard Simmons, who was a big fitness guru, dancing to the oldies. And I first remember him. He had a show on a weekday morning show that I think was on 5 days a week in the early 80s. He had they had the 80s dress. They had the 80s dress and big 80s hair. He did anyway. I guess most of the other people did too. And I remember that set was a very early 80s set with stained wood and oh gosh, it was so characteristic of that era. And that show was on, I guess, for a few years. I remember it. I think it was on the same channel that carried Donahue. It didn't really have a lot of game shows on weekday mornings for some reason back then. But his persona and the way he would often dress as a fitness guy kind of lended itself to being made fun of, and that's exactly what happened on the David Letterman show whenever he was on Dave's show. Those were probably some of the absolute best segments that Dave ever had. And that's saying a lot because he did a lot of funny segments over the years before he got kind of political, really. Always looked forward to seeing Richard on that show. And I guess Richard disappeared after Dave retired, and I don't know. I don't know what happened to him. Very sad that he's gone. But like I said, he really seemed to ask for a lot of what he got, if you know what I mean. And then we saw also on Saturday, I believe, or at least that's when I heard it, Dr. Ruth Westheimer passed away. She was like 96, and she had kind of disappeared from public life as well. I don't know exactly what her title was. She was a big sexologist or sex therapist from Germany. Probably West Germany, actually, when she came over here, I'm guessing. But didn't know a lot about her. She came on the scene. I don't know exactly when she came on the scene, but I know she had a show in the 80s that was on late at night, like on Lifetime Channel or something. Mom didn't want us watching us, my brother and my mom didn't want us watching her show, which, I'm like, why not? Let's just see what this is about or whatever. So it was very taboo. And really, I didn't see her on TV or read a lot of her books over the years. So I don't really, she talked a lot about sex, obviously, but I don't really know what her specific takes on sex or sexuality were. I do think that sex is something that should be talked about more openly and more freely in our society. That's one of those topics that I'm talking about, or what we'd like to talk about more on this show, but it's hidden. Society shies away from it. Excuse me, still dealing with that cough. Society shies away from it, and people, I think, are at least poorer in knowledge and understanding than they might otherwise be because we shy away from it. I am interested, or at least wondering, that since she was from Germany, what she thought about naturism or nudism and body image, and how that, I think, has been marginalized a lot because of misunderstandings, misinformation out there about sex over the years. Like, for example, nudity does not equal sex. The modern naturist movement started in Germany. I don't know if she had any opinions on that or not, or she even practiced naturism or not, but that would have been an interesting topic to ask her. And then one more that we need to cover. I know we've gone a long time already on the show here. Found out yesterday on Sunday, the 14th, that Shannen Doherty, who was in quite a few things over the years, a little bit older than me, died from cancer at age 53. And a lot of people were kind of surprised. Apparently she had a little stint on Little House on the Prairie in the early 80s, and also was on that show. I actually watched this as a kid, called Our House, which had Wilford Brimley and Deidre Hall. I was absolutely in love with Deidre Hall. She's still around. Very pretty lady. So is Shannen Doherty. Man, I gotta get rid of this cough somehow. But Shannen, of course, went on to 90210 and a couple other reincarnations. I, of course, know her best as one of the girlfriends from Mallrats, in case you want to check out that show from Frank Weber's party last year. That, of course, was one of Priscilla Barnes' best scenes ever in that movie. Shannen wasn't in it, but in that scene, but certainly that and her other works are worth a look. Very sad to see her go. She was, I guess she was considered pretty hot. She wasn't my favorite, but I think she seemed like a good person, down to earth, what have you, from what I know. I never met her. Didn't meet any of these folks, actually, but just want to give a shout out, pray for them and all their families, as well as President Trump's, and we continue to make these podcasts, trying to make the world and humanity a better place. As always, you're welcome to comment on the show. Tell me what you think. Tell your friends and family. Hit subscribe. I'm actually doing the show today. It's been so hot lately, so I'm actually doing the show without my shirt on. But unfortunately, don't have any video yet. But we're working toward it. We're working towards some big things here. Anyway, that's it this week for It's a Frankly Harry podcast. Y'all have a great week. I love you, and take care of each other. Be kind to each other. Let's start doing some little things to break the ice and make things a little bit better during the day. And anyway, take care. Have a great week. Bye.